Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, the Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And in today's video, yes, you read the title correct, another Arthur Wright & Son knife, and this one is a knife I haven't discussed before. And what that is a Spearpoint. Now, I have heard this be referred to as the English Jack in some cases, but the real correct term for this type of knife is boy's knife. Now, it is a boy's knife. Like many things in the knife world, there's always going to be a certain degree of speculation and debate and opinion that goes into defining what a certain knife is. But to most, a boy's knife is a teardrop shape handle with a shorter bolster, for if it was a longer bolster, it would fall into the realm of Barlow. Hello, Alice. And they frequently, although don't always, but frequently feature a Spearpoint blade. This is a very good example of what most think of when they think of a boy's knife. This is an Ottermesser, and this was quite expensive despite its size, but bumped the camera a little. You have a nice mixture of brass with the pins, liners, and bolsters, and they go very, very well with this delightfully grained Rosewood, which is a fairly expensive and uncommon timber to see on knives. But this is a very, very nice little piece. Again, it's a small carry. The blade is, I believe, under 2 inches cutting edge, but I could confirm that. Oh no, it's a bit over 2 inches. Cutting edge comes into just a little over 2 1/4, but it's still a very small knife. And this is probably what I would say is my first real experience with a boy's knife. And I was very impressed with it, its simplicity and classic style. And again, I am very biased to a traditional German slip joint made with brass. But today, we'll take a look at Sheffield's version of this pattern. And like the other knife that I bought from Steel City Cutlery, this came in a nice velvet pouch, which protects your knife from scratches if there's anything else in your pocket. And if the camera would be so kind as to focus, there we are. Here is the Arthur Wright version. Now, this is a bit larger. The length and width you can see on the A Wright are a little bit more noticeable than that of the Ottermesser. The dry Neaton Messer by Otter is considerably larger. I'd say it's about this big, but it's a bit less of a boy's knife. That would be a bit more of a debatable one for me. But both knives feature carbon steel of a similar grade. This is C70. The Ottermesser is C75. Both have carbon steel back springs, I believe, brass liners, pins. However, the bolsters are quite different. You can see that the Arthur Wright bolsters are made of nickel silver and are pinched, whereas the Ottermesser is flat and is made of brass. Also, note the difference in the finish. We have nickel silver with a mirror polish, whereas the brass is more of a satin finish, which makes for a nice matte look. The pull on this knife is typical of an A Wright, and bear in mind, I did put special order notes, I suppose, asking for the knives to be checked to ensure that the pulls weren't too over tight. And this was supposed to be one of the looser ones. So when I say that this is a testament to just how tight Arthur Wright knife springs can be, I'm not joking. That, my friends, I would say is probably a 9 bordering on a 10. And again, everyone's personal scale is different, but this is easily one of the stiffest knife springs I probably have. And I'm trying to think if there are any that match it currently, and I'm having trouble finding an example. But here we are. We have a nice Spearpoint blade. Hasn't patinaed yet, as I've only had it for around a week and haven't used it enough to garner much of a patina. But again, C70 steel. We have the A. Wright and Son Limited Sheffield, England logo. And I believe this is their older stamp. So this knife could have been made a couple years ago. The edge is moderately sharp. I'd say this is a bit more what you'd expect for an Arthur Wright. It could definitely use a touch-up. In fact, I probably will give it a bit of a strop before I genuinely start using it. Because, unfortunately, with the many things that Arthur Wright does right, there are still a few things that they could probably improve on. Granted, this is an older knife based on the stamp, and so I noticed that the recent knives that they've been making in the last few months have come fairly sharp, but the older knives were plagued with a bit of a tendency to be a bit blunt. No blade play, up or down, side to side. Transitions from bolster to cover, outstanding. Pins are perfectly flush. Gapping seems pretty non-existent. Can't tell if there's a gap here. Oh, let me hold it up to the light. Well, nothing shines through. So if that is a gap, and I somewhat doubt it is, there isn't really anything suggesting that it's all that large of one. Transition from spring to blade is quite good. And the polish overall on the back is decent. It's obviously not Taylor's Eyewitness Premier Collection levels of shiny, but that is to be expected for a knife that costs probably about a sixth of the price. There is a stop pin in here. Don't know how well you can see that, but there's a little brass stop pin. And I'm glad I saw that. There is a bit of gapping from from handle to liner. And that is unfortunate, as the liners are dished in the hopes of preventing this. But you can see there is a bit of a gap right there. And so that could be a bit irritating if you ever got water in there. But in the sense of spring to liner gapping, thankfully the knife seems pretty competent. The handles here, if I didn't mention already, I believe these are Rosewood. Nice grain overall. Nice dark chocolatey brown with a bit of red. I wouldn't say that this is nicer than the Wengewood, though. But, again, bear in mind, this is quite a bit more expensive than this. This knife cost around 57 Canadian, which is probably around the 30, 33, 35 pound mark. So definitely not an expensive knife. And comparing it to this, which cost probably around 160, you can definitely see that these are a good deal when you consider the fact that, well, knives like this are double, triple the price. Although I would say this one was a bit pricier than it should have been. Bit of a lazy half stop here. It's not enough that I'd really call it a full half stop, but there's a bit of resistance here. And I know it's probably not good for the knife, but snap it shut just so you can hear. Quite a loud thwack. Unfortunately, the blade centering is not that good with this one. You can see it's quite a bit off to the right. Not rubbing, thankfully, although it is getting close. But that is a bit unfortunate, and the spring cutoff with many Arthurite knives is not quite perfect. Blade in the open position, however, is quite good. There doesn't seem to be any warping going on in the edge. Although one could argue that the grind could give the illusion of an off edge. Point isn't exactly sharp. Spear points have never been the pointiest knives out there. I find that they tend to be a bit more rounded. The same can be said with this Ottermesser. Again, I would say that a Warrenclyffe or a clip point will be a lot better at detail work involving piercing than a Spearpoint would. Just take a second to line the two up, and again, you can see that the Otter is a bit smaller, but the sizes are quite similar. The blade on the Arthurite is actually a bit thinner overall and has a smaller nail nick. Do some quick measurements on the Wright. Your overall length is around 6.5, so a bit larger overall. Your overall blade length, including the tang, is just a little bit over 2 3/4, and the cutting edge is almost dead on 2.5. So this is indeed a UK legal knife. There's no lock on it, and the blade is within the 3-inch regulation. So you could absolutely carry this in the UK, and I could see the strong spring to some being a good substitute for a lock blade, as the main reason for a lock is to ensure the safety of one's fingers when using the knife. But in the UK, where lock knives are mostly prohibited, a strong spring can, if not remedy the problem, at very least help to make it a little less of a concern. So, my thoughts on this knife. I will say, I very much like the design. I think this symmetrical, or close to symmetrical, teardrop shape with the Spearpoint blade is a very stylish yet traditional knife, even in its simplicity, and I very much would enjoy to carry this, and I think I will carry it probably. Definitely not a safe queen, but I will say this is a good lesson, as there are some, fit and finish inaccuracies here. I would say that this is a good reminder of what Arthur Wright used to do. And now comparing to some of the more recent knives, like the Special Factory Order Ettrick from Moonraker that I got a few weeks ago, or perhaps one of the new Peach Pruners and such. I know Honey Haynes had a few of them available not that long ago. More of the recent Wright released knives, I've noticed that the quality has been improving. And I'm very happy to see that. And I think the knives are able to stay in a price range that is quite affordable, while at the same time keeping up fit and finish that you may not call perfect, but at the same time you're not going to be complaining about and finding a dozen different things wrong with your knife when you receive it. This knife, I do believe, based on the stamp, that this is an older knife. It could be anywhere from a couple years to maybe 5 years old, and because of that, I'm not going to judge it too harshly, as I am very much aware that the company has come a long way in a short period of time, and they are making improvements, and I'm happy to see that. But I would still say that for the price, this is still a perfectly good using knife. The strong spring, the carbon blade, simple rosewood handles, feels great in the hand. This would make an excellent carry knife. But I would not say that the fit and finish is up to collector standards. And comparing it with this knife, I would definitely say that there is a lot of room for improvement. Granted, I will be fair. This knife is considerably more expensive, almost to the point I would say it's overpriced. This knife being able to come even close to this for, say, a third to just a little under a half of the price is still very impressive. So if Arthur Wright can crank out a knife at this price, 50, 60 Canadian dollars, and just up those fit and finish standards a tiny bit more, maybe cleaning up the gaps and possibly improving the cutoff of the spring, or in this one, centering the blades a bit better, I think that the company would not only be a top contender for the best budget-friendly handmade knife, but may very well be able to knock a lot of other competitors completely off of the pedestal, because seeing what they're able to do for what is really a very good price, considering the kind of labor involved in the production of one of these, I think that if they were able to just clean up that fit and finish just a tiny bit more, these would be almost unbeatable. But again, I think a lot of the new Arthur Wrights are very much within that realm, but the older ones were still a product of their time, I suppose, where the standards were just a little bit lower. I'm not saying this is a bad knife. I'd still be perfectly happy carrying it and using it, but saying that this is a top quality offering, I don't think would be entirely fair. Regardless, I'm still happy to have it in my collection. I didn't have an Arthur Wright Spearpoint up until now, and it fills a role that really was left kind of empty up until now. So, yeah, overall, I'm impressed with this. I think that there could be improvements still, but being an older knife, that's okay. And again, I'm looking very much forward to seeing what Wright can accomplish in the future. I think that the knife community has been very positive overall with the knives, and while we do still try, or at least I still try, to point out issues when I see them in the hopes that the company can improve themselves, I still think that I will be supporting this brand, even though they have had issues in the past. But again, I'm happy with this knife, and this is the second of 3 new Arthur Wright knives. The third one, again, will be hopefully coming out in the next week or so. But that's me being optimistic. Regardless, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This has been the Arthur Wright & Son Spearpoint, or boy's knife, or English Jack, depending on what you want to call it, in Rosewood. And this is the Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.